Welcome along, my aspiring allies, and thank you for joining me on this most recent episode of the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. Today, I am joined by Beatrix Schmidt, and Beatrix is a sleep coach for adults and a professional speaker as well as an author. Her most recent book being Sleep Skills for Life, and her previous book being The Sleep Deep Method. Now, she works with people predominantly who have tried everything, all of the hints, tips, and hacks to try and get a restful night's sleep to no avail. This is what we really got into in our conversation today, because her ethos is that sleep isn't just good luck, it is a set of learned skills that we can all build into our daily practice so that we can make the most of our restful sleep time. Now, she is very clear when she says her remit is to work with people who have maybe long-term or bigger problems when it comes to sleep. But that doesn't mean she isn't here for those of us that maybe just have the occasional challenge. But our focus today really was on people with longer term sleep challenges. So there is definitely something in here for everybody, because quite frankly, a lot of her examples really did resonate for me. And I wouldn't say that I am someone who has major sleep problems, but I absolutely know where she excels and comes into her own is really untangling some of the challenges that her clients have been facing for up to maybe 15 years. So she really is the go-to person when it comes to helping us have good quality sleep. So without further ado, you know the drill. Please sit back, relax, and get comfortable in whichever way works best for you. And please welcome Beatrix Schmidt to the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. Beatrix Schmidt, thank you so much for joining me on the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Me
So
too. Do you know,
excited.
as I was just saying to you, I have been checking my diary with this one because I was very much looking forward to having a conversation around sleep and sleep skills. And I knew, this is a topic that I think is going to resonate with so many people, even to the point that this morning, I have the same person who I see every morning when I come back from the gym, and he's walking by on his dog walk. And he
Yeah.
said, what's on the podcast recording schedule for the day? And I
Yeah.
said, I am talking about sleep. And then we went on to
Oh,
have a big old conversation about it. So I know he is absolutely going to be waiting out for this episode. So
yeah.
what I think might be a nice place for us to start then is,
Mhm.
given that this is such an important topic, but I know that you didn't kind of just, excuse the pun, but wake up one day thinking I'm going to talk about sleep. So
Yeah.
I know, right? we'll get
Yeah.
those puns out of the way early.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
how is it that you arrived at where you've arrived at today?
So basically, the background to where I am now is really very much about, and we're going to talk about this more later on as well, is who I am as a person. So I've always been an analytical type person. I'm quite competitive. I like to do things well. I like to reflect back on things that maybe didn't go the way I wanted. So in my 20s, as I started sort of developing more of as an adult, that trait, those sort of thinker type traits really, really became very strong. And so that's how I actually ended up struggling with insomnia, is I really didn't understand how my sleep was functioning within who I am and what lifestyle I was living at the time. And so the eagerness, the wanting to do well led to a lot of overthinking, a lot of doing more, trying more, doing things differently, learning, wanting to learn. So I ended up really struggling, not just with falling asleep, but as it developed, as my insomnia developed, it actually started becoming more and more of a problem. And I used to wake up in the middle of the night and at its worst with nosebleeds. And in your 20s, you're like, what is going wrong with me? What's wrong with me, right? Physically, because it's a
Yeah,
physical sign.
that would be very concerning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first time it happens, it's okay, like one off, but then it actually happened night after night, like a few nights within any week. And I'm like, okay, is there something wrong with me? Now, most of you who are listening to this episode might not ever have that, but you have your own version. So you might be waking up with more headaches, or you're waking up more sluggish, or you're gonna have some of those physical signs that as sleep deprivation sort of picks up momentum actually shows up. But
Yeah.
we often don't see them because it's gradual. It's not overnight. Most of
Yeah.
the clients I work with, none of their sleep problems were overnight. It's more of an accumulative effect. Again, there's different situations. So that's really how I got into this
Yeah.
field. First of all, I'm like, I'm in my 20s. This is not normal. None of my friends are doing like waking up like that and struggling to fall asleep. So, if any of you are thinker types, you'll be very familiar with this when you might be exhausted, but you are just wired, right? That was a very typical sort of everyday situation for me. And it just ended up expanding and expanding. So, then less and less sleep happened, whether or not it was the middle of the night waking or the initial not falling asleep. And then naturally, if you have a certain, we all got to get up to works at some point, the window shortened of really how much sleep I was able to get.
Yeah.
And I went to see my doctor, and there was nothing wrong with me physically. And so a lot of the times, this is what I'm seeing in my practice every day is whilst we talk about sleep, about physical things that might not be going right, but a lot of the stuff I'm seeing in my practice is that it's not, you're not going to have a physical problem. Please do
Yeah.
have it checked out. Obviously, I always recommend, but our minds are all working. We're leading faster lives than ever before. And a lot of that is actually more of that mental overload that we're seeing. So that's
Yeah.
how I ended up kind of almost falling into this because I got curious. I was like, if 6 months ago this didn't happen, then something must have changed for me to now experience this in a
Yeah.
practical way.
Yeah.
And then
Absolutely.
I've learned about it.
Mm.
So that's been sort of, I keep saying 12 years, but it's over 15 now, really. So, and I've been working with clients for 12 years. And so I overcame my insomnia fully before I even started working with clients. So that
Yeah.
also gives me this understanding that change is completely possible. Just
Yeah.
because we might not sleep well for a period of time, we can learn to proactively develop great sleep and those skills that we're going to sort of talk about later on.
Yeah, perfect. And I like what I'm hearing in here is that not only are you an expert in these sleep skills that you're going to kind of explain to us, but you have lived experience of all of the, I can only imagine is an emotional roller coaster that
Oh,
people who are experiencing sleep problems will go on. Because as you were explaining that, the one thing that stood out for me was I can only imagine that if you're struggling to sleep, and like you say, that window of
mhm.
opportunity, for want of a better word, that you get to be able to sleep well shortens and shortens. That must be a worry, and then you're worrying about not sleeping, which means you sleep less because your brain's in worry mode, and it feels like this self-perpetuating cycle and incredibly stressful.
Yeah. And for me, and again, different people will hear different things in terms of their situation. For me, it was actually more frustration. So worry initially, why am I having bleeding nose? Like what's going on? But then when the doctor said there's nothing wrong with you, then that was the frustration of I'm looking for solutions, but nothing's matching. I'm trying all these things, but it's not actually helping me to get the results I should be having or getting.
Yeah,
So there is the frustration of, well, I don't fit into that box that I'm seeing. None of the sleep tips worked for me
yeah,
because it wasn't physically driven. It was that I had a certain sort of overactive mind and the personality traits that I had. So it turned into more of that frustration. And what you feel is you feel lonely because you might talk to your friends, but your friends aren't experiencing that.
yeah,
Your siblings, your spouse, maybe they might not be experiencing those things. So often, and clients tell me all the time, nobody understands it.
yeah,
They think they understand it, but they don't. And then
yeah,
so it turns into frustration. And often it's a very long time before people can really sort of put the pieces together again.
yeah,
So yeah, it's very emotional. And often it's, I think, it's very lonely. So if you're awake in the middle of the night and everybody else around you sleeps well, it's incredibly lonely. Like I'm not, what am I supposed to do with this thing that I'm experiencing?
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that actually stood up when you were saying there about, perhaps people who share a bedroom with someone, like how frustrating when you've got someone sound asleep for a good eight
Yeah,
hours solid, snoring their face off, and you're literally sat there clock watching every minute that
yeah,
painfully ticks by.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you got sort of drifting apart, right? So when I talk with couples, and naturally I work with the person that struggles, but I also talk about this. How do you even begin to communicate differently? Like first thing in the morning, the spouse normally asks, "How did you sleep?" because they care. But that's kind of almost, it's not inappropriate, but it's, you don't want to keep talking about how you didn't sleep well, right? And
Yeah.
then in the morning that becomes the conversation where you just prefer to leave it in the past.
Yeah,
So
and I can
yeah,
imagine being quite resentful as well, like that, as time ticks on, like you say, I don't want to watch you sleep next to me. I don't want you to ask me about how I'm sleeping. We all know I'm not sleeping very well. And then that spills over into every aspect of our life, doesn't it?
yeah,
That because we are existing human living people,
yeah,
we can't
yeah.
just pop I didn't, I haven't been sleeping well for several weeks now. I'll just pop that
Mm.
in a box and go and perform my best at work.
And it affects everyone differently. For some people it's more internal. So I'm an intelligent person, why can't I figure this out? For another person, it's going to be worries, so health related worries, because the only thing we see online is the negative impact of sleep deprivation and how doomed we might be if we don't sleep well, right? And then everybody has a different sort of outcome from that, which is, and again, this is what I hear every day. It's so sad because we're not talking about sleep in a proactively practical way. Throwing 5 tips at a problem, it's not going to work for everyone because we are different. So therefore, the basis of our sleep problems will be different. Like I'm a thinker type, but another person will be more of the what I would call emotional type, more sensitive. That's a different type of baseline,
Mm,
you know?
yeah, I'm glad you said that because I was going to ask that because you've used that term now, thinker type, several times. So
Yeah.
tell us a bit more. What does that mean?
So basically, how I see it is behavior, right? So I'm both introverted and extroverted, but I will always sort of think about events, reflect on them. Another version of thinker type will be that you like problem solving. So if somebody has a problem for a friend, for example, you almost love solving their problems, right? Or you get fired up about, I'm going to help, right? Another version here would be to think about the future and what you desire to have, what you want to achieve. There's the competitiveness too. Like I want to really achieve the things that feels important to me. That's more thinking ahead. Like how can I make that happen? How can I problem solve that thing? So overall what I how I define, and you listeners, you will know when you are like that because you know yourself very well. I
There
think
will
we
be
all
people
can.
going, "Oh, yeah, that's me.
Yeah,
That's me."
that's
Yeah.
me. Yeah, exactly. Now naturally thoughts and emotions are very close to each other. They're not separate, but how I normally define it or describe it to people is it that the thoughts create the emotions? So you're going to start thinking about the problem, then you become worried about it, or the worry comes first, which creates the thinking later. And usually people tend to know which end they start with.
Yeah. For
But
everybody
again,
listening here, I'm nodding furiously because I'm like, "Oh, I'm a worrier," and then the thinking comes afterwards. Yeah.
so it's usually like for you, it's the problem or worry first, and then you expand the possibilities, right? Whereas for a thinker person, me, I'm more an idea first and then it expands into an emotional thing. So it's just a slightly different
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah.
But again,
An experience and a processing of information.
yeah, absolutely. And again, for you listeners, again, it's not about which one you are, it's about maybe just start to understand how the emotions and the thoughts actually bi-directional, so they affect each other. They're not separate. So
Yeah.
when I overthink, I feel the agitation, the edginess, even if I'm excited, like I feel that. So they're not separate, they're together. But usually you got a different approach. And I think I'm seeing a lot of it because we do live faster lives. We can't blame the faster life for the outcomes. And I think that's really important. Again, it comes back to skill sets, right? So just because we live a faster life, it does not have to mean we're struggling with sleep problems. But we have to learn to work with ourselves in a better way and an effective way. Not just I'm going to try and cross my fingers, but really develop what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's I guess that's what we're quite looking forward to getting into today as well,
Yeah,
isn't it? Thinking about the
yeah,
skills-based side of it, because it's all very well understanding the theoretical experience, but actually what
yeah,
we want is some tips.
yeah.
Before we get to those things a bit more deeply,
Mhm.
I do want to ask, how, when we're thinking about people's kind of styles and preferences and the way that we might be,
Yeah.
and I love the way you described it as that kind of that bi-directional relationship between thoughts and feelings, because we are kind of in a tangle between both of them most of the time, aren't we?
Mhm.
How, or do you see, certainly with your clients or in your research, how do you see this impacting certain kind of neurodiversities as well, in terms of the, the way our
Yeah.
brains function differently? This must play insomnia and sleep must have a different impact there as
Oh,
well.
yeah, totally. So what we have now is more understanding of where we fit. So a lot of the neurodiversity is a scale, right? So
Yeah.
are you fitting into a scale of the definition? But that scale is still a scale. So you might be on the lower end, you might be in the middle, you might be on the higher end. And how sleep relates is it's a 24 hours. So if we put sleep in the middle, not at the end of it, so often people think of sleep as the end of the day, right? I like to actually explain it in a way that it's in the middle. So you've got your lunchtime to evening, let's say, just for argument's sake, you've got your sleep in the middle, and then you've got your after, first thing or first half of your day. So if you have any sort of tendencies, so neurodiverse tendencies, or if you've been diagnosed, again, that's why I want to sort of keep it a bit loose, you're gonna know how that affects the way you are. It's not that something is wrong, is that you're just different.
Yeah.
Therefore, your sleep will be different in relation to who you are.
Yeah.
So if you're waking up in the morning, let's say, and again, I'm just going to give you my example. I'm not diagnosed with any sort of neurodiverse, but I'm pretty sure I'm recognizing a lot of the traits. So
Yeah.
if I'm waking up in the morning and my mind goes real fast, almost this high attention and very fast thoughts, and I live in that for most of my day, my brain, my mind will not understand what's the opposite because
Mm.
I'm spending 8, 9, 10, 12 hours in that role, in that personality trait group. So it's not just one, it's often combination. So if we don't spend so much time almost practicing that part of us, we don't see the other side. So the opposite would be, let's say, a relaxed mind. Now, the mind will never be empty. Sometimes people put the pressure on, well, I've got to empty my mind. It's not quite that way. If you're awake, your mind has to create thoughts because it's the consciousness. So it's never going to be empty. But I normally describe it in how fast or how attached you are to maybe that behavior. Like for me, I could overthink all day, but what that will mean is that it will never stop at 10 o'clock when I'm wanting to switch it
Yeah.
off because it's not used to stopping.
Yeah.
So the way I then help people is that we put in different behaviors that allows the brain and the mind to understand that I don't have to function at that level all the time. Oh, I can change into this other version. So if we're going with someone, for example, again, me, if I'm always overthinking, and I never train my mind to understand what the opposite of it can't create it. So and this is what used to happen, is when I used to just get into bed, my mind would be like, well, what are we doing next? We've done all
Yeah.
these things during the day. Just because we lie down, well, you're not telling me what to do next. But
Yeah.
actually, what we should do is not do, right?
Yeah.
So that's hopefully helped to kind of understand how I see these things. It's not that these traits or neurodiverse, maybe diagnosis is preventing sleep to develop, is that we don't know how to proactively work with that part of
Yeah.
us,
And I
right?
guess that makes a lot of sense because I guess it is taken for granted generally, isn't it? That, you know, at the end of the day, it gets dark, we get into bed, we fall asleep. And it's just the thing that everybody does. But actually, it's not. Like,
No,
that's not the case for everybody.
no.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
actually, it's about then understanding, well, let's not continue to perpetuate that myth that it is just shut your eyes, everybody falls asleep. That actually, if that's not a universal experience, then how, like you said, how do we train ourselves to work with ourselves so
Mhm.
that we can achieve, I guess, the best outcome? Because not everybody needs the same amount of sleep either, do they?
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think I want to kind of tie up a few misconceptions there
Yeah, do.
quickly.
Yes, please.
I always say to people that you've got to know whether or not you're sleeping well. Don't just get on with it. Because the problem with just getting on with it is that you're not listening to what's showing up. So let's define that in a practical way. And again, that's because sleeping well, everybody has a different definition. How much sleep is everybody has a different definition. So what I normally say to clients is if it takes you more than 20 minutes to fall asleep, and again, it's not a scientific, I just like to make it practical. So if it takes you more than 20 minutes to fall asleep, let's say 3 out of 7 days, what that shows us is you don't have the skill to be able to get yourself into bed close to relaxation so your body can transition in to sleep, right? So the longer it takes you to then fall asleep, you can fall asleep. It just takes you that long to get there. So if somebody listening, it takes you maybe over an hour to fall asleep, it's not that you can't fall asleep. It's you can't proactively shorten the time frame it takes you. So that's one of the misconceptions. Then if we look at nighttime wakings, I wake up too, but it's not what I would call a disturbance. So I might wake up. Yes, that's a very normal part of sleep. So that's not abnormal to wake up. But again, it's how troublesome it is. Are you then staying awake, tossing and turning, listening to your other half nicely, sort of soundly sleeping, and then you get frustrated? Or are you able to drift off in an easy way? Right. So again, if it takes you more than 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes to then drift back off to sleep, we're looking at the same thing here is do you have the skill set in able to enable transition back into sleep, or it's randomly happening and it takes however long it takes, right? So then you're just hoping for the best rather than proactively able to create it. And then in terms of how many hours of sleep, everyone's different, but I always say to clients, I don't like to go under 7 hours. And for just the practical reason for that is if you are more of a go-getter type, I'm very much like that, then it's very easy to say, I don't need more because I've got these other important things to do and achieve. But now you're training yourself to disregard the actual need of sleep, right? So that often with go-getter types, high achiever types, it's more that I don't need as much sleep. Well, is the quality and the quantity of sleep you're getting giving you the highest performance during the day in a practical way, not a pushing through the way?
Yep.
So I never aim for less than 7 hours because what that also means is if you know how to create these things, it will always give you a solid daytime. But if you kind of, it's here, there, and everywhere, what that shows is there is no stability. So that's what I again look at as a sleep problem. So, and just again easier to define it. So 3 out of 7 days, 4 out of 7 days. So if it's just a one-off, it's slightly different. It might not cause as much of an issue. But the other thing I also want you all listeners to think about, if one night is 5 hours, another one is 8 across a 7 day period, it's a huge margin, it's a huge gap between the two. So we don't just want per one night how many hours you get, but what's the stability of it across the week? How much proactiveness you have to know that it is going to happen the way you want it to happen rather than it's random.
Yeah.
So when we look at definition of insomnia and sleep problems, it's not just about a one-off, it's about what's the bigger picture here? What are the dynamics?
That is incredibly helpful. Thank you for explaining all of that. And some of the things that were popping into my mind as you were saying that as well is, and I really like when you were talking about like those sleep transitions, in that we haven't developed the skills to be able to either fall asleep initially or to return to sleep if we are woken up. And I like the fact that we're calling it a skill, so it's a learned thing, right? We can,
Yeah.
if someone's listening to some, cheers, thanks for telling me I haven't developed that skill. We
Yeah.
can learn it though, right? That's what we're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Human behavior is much more fluid. Like, if we can learn a new language, if we can learn to
Yeah.
exercise, if we can learn to meditate, if we can learn to breathe slower, if we can learn to communicate more effectively with someone who is different to us, we we can learn. The problem with, again, I see in the sleep industry is it's not talked about that way. It's
Yeah.
almost scientifically talked about, but we're not talking about the human behaviors that surround sleep. So when you sleep, while we talk about switching off, your mind, your brain is active, but
Well,
we're
otherwise
not.
we'd die, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, let's
exactly.
just
Like
call
it,
it out. If our brains were
exactly.
decided for 8 hours to switch off, I don't know anybody whose body could function without the critical support the brain gives you for 8 hours.
Absolutely. And so the way I talk about it is more sort of the capacity of the mind, so the perception and it's really, sleep is very much about autopilot behaviors that are inside of you that you don't have to think about because they happen. The entire sleep context, all the 5 different sleep stages that you alternate between are automated. We just often actually develop daytime behaviors that prevent the good behaviors or good sleep behaviors to happen naturally. So, again, if somebody is really active during the day, let's say physically active, we take another avenue here. If you're always physically active, and you could sort of spot that. So even if you do office work, but maybe you're also always tapping your fingers, or your legs are always going, or you just kind of more fidgety, what that means is your body is continuously creating that energy because you have to move. You can't expect yourself to be lying down for 8 hours and that behavior never to show up if it's automatically showing up during the day when you are just sitting down, right? Again, emotions, if you're more of that type of person who gets very sensitive to things, nothing wrong with that. We're not labeling it as a negative. You're just that type that you, maybe somebody says something and it affects you more, then that's not going to turn off just because you shut your eyes,
Yeah. Just because you
right?
look at the alarm and think, oh, well, it's half
Yeah,
past 9. I should be making my way to bed now. I'll just put all of
yeah,
that stuff to one side.
right. And so these are internal behaviors that you've learned from very, very, very early age. Like, we're talking baby age here, right? You develop personality traits very early on. And so when I talk about sleep skills, it's how do you proactively create something? And again, to simplify it, because it sounds too big almost, or like, where do I begin? So when I talk about transitioning into sleep, it's physical, emotional, mental relaxation first. You're never going to fall asleep if you're not relaxed enough for your body to be able to say, right, this is that time. If you're edgy, if you're fidgety, if you're frustrated, upset, disappointed, nervous, if your mind is thinking about what happened 3 hours ago, or it's thinking about tomorrow I've got an important meeting, or recalling memories from a summer holiday you had because it was rainy all day and you're really upset about the fact that it's rainy all day, you're not necessarily relaxed at that time. You're too far away from that physical, emotional, mental relaxation. So the way I teach this to my clients is so that they can understand what they're seeing first. So if a client is nervous and they don't see how they got to 70% nervousness from 0 to 70, it might have started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but they haven't managed to decrease it. And it just creeps up a bit more. So if we take a skill, for example, we take running, you can only accelerate and run fast if you become faster. As you start running, you start taking faster steps. Your heart has to work harder. So you're building up to sprinting.
Yeah.
And as soon as you stop, your heart isn't just going to calm down straight away. It takes a while to bring down everything when you stopped running, for example.
Yeah.
So the mind is the same. If your racing thought has developed over a 3 hour period, again, a 5 minute meditation, which is often advised, isn't going to counter 3 hours of acceleration for your thoughts. It's too
Yeah.
short. It might distract you from it. But again, most of you who might have experimented with meditation, when you stop meditation, your mind just goes racing again
Yeah.
because it was
Yeah.
just distracting rather than decreasing,
Yeah.
right? So, and again, I hope that this helps you all to see what I mean by skills. We know we can decrease the racing mind, we just don't proactively practice it.
Yeah, perfect. And I think that's a fantastic, some really great metaphors and or analogies in there around it's absolutely true, isn't it? And a lot of the advice, like you said, that is readily available or that is most commonly spoken about is those quick fixes, like just have a hot bath, just do a meditation, just as if like that's all it will take. But actually, what you're explaining here is this is a skill, and in the same way that you would learn a new language, you have to keep practicing, you have to keep, you know, putting effort into developing that skill. And that's not something that you do it for 5 minutes and you're going to be like, got that skill sorted. It's not like getting a badge or something. It's
Yeah.
like you have to actually work at it, I'm hearing.
Yeah, and work at it, but the most important thing is that you're not using something that never has the capacity to long term help you. So a lot of the problems, and let's take the hot bath example, right? If you're a more sensitive person or you're more of a thinker type, you might have a bath, but you will think about someone that upset you for the bath, and you're
Yeah.
gonna think about the problems you have. So you might have a physical bath, but
Yeah.
it hasn't undone the other two layers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so when you come out of the bath, you might feel more physically relaxed, but the other two don't necessarily follow.
Yeah.
So that's the mismatch there.
Yeah.
And I actually said so many clients over the years, I said, instead of you having a bath, I'm actually going to teach you something that will be always be effective. So if you go on a holiday and you don't happen to have a bath, you're still going to be able to fall asleep in an easy way because the bath isn't required. These are internal skills. You don't
Yeah.
have to pack anything.
Yeah.
And again, even in my book, I talk about this. So sleep skills are things that you don't have to pack into the suitcase because they're inside of you, that they work with who you are, no matter who you are, like no matter what kind of traits you have,
Mm.
right? Because sleep is created from inside out. not
Yeah.
from the outside in.
Brilliant. Yeah, that makes
Right?
perfect sense. And I guess that's also why the title of your book is Sleep Skills for Life. Like, you know,
Absolutely.
you're going 10 toes down on that one to say this is something that you can possess within yourself for the duration of your life.
Yeah. And also we know that we sleep is a huge part of us being a human. We can't function without it. It affects every area of our life,
Yeah.
positively or negatively, depending on how sleep looks like. And so, and this is one of the things I saw when I overcame my insomnia. I'm still an overthinker, I'm still an analytical type, but I just work with myself more proactively so my sleep is not impacted. I'm not different.
Yeah.
I just work with myself better.
I really love how you're positioning that as well, because actually there's nothing wrong with any of us, is there? Just as humans,
Yeah.
we are who we are, right? We do what we do, we process in the way that we process. And I like your framing particularly, which is we just work with ourselves as we are.
Yeah.
And that might develop then as you learn new skills, right?
Yeah,
We might
absolutely.
notice a shift, but we're not doing it for corrective action. We're doing it, we're working with the hand that we've been dealt.
And it's not, and again, I say this so much now, it's not that you're broken. It's that the way we work with our sleep dynamics isn't aligned. And that's very different. And so regularly now, if you're, let's say, let's take again the sensitive type person, it's not bad. You're going to be great at spotting when somebody's certain, maybe upset. Whereas me, a thinker type, I'm not going to spot it as easily because I'm not that type. So, like, all of us have these gems of who we are. In relation to sleep, it's not negative. It's just that it's going to develop sleep in a different way.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's important for us to learn what works for us. And that's why the tips don't often succeed because
Mm.
they're too general and they're too superficial. So temperature, like sleep hygiene, right? Temperature, have a good mattress, dark curtains. If you're a thinker type, none of those things will make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because as soon as you lie down, your mind just goes off and thinks about 20,000 different things, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the mismatch.
Yeah.
Sleep hygiene would have worked 20 years ago, but it's no longer as proactively relevant.
Yeah.
Not in most situations. And that's what I see. Like, yes, please have a good mattress. And yes, level of light, darkness, yes. But actually, what I'm finding now is most people are afraid of light. They're turning their lights off at 6 o'clock in the evening when they're going to bed at 11. That's not what that is about.
Yeah. And is this because we're kind of conditioning ourselves to think those things are the problem? Yeah, so we're taking almost over corrective actions.
Yeah.
Actually, that that's not going to achieve anything.
And it just depends on the situation. So if somebody has, again, it's situational, right? So if you don't have a comfortable bed, of course that's going to affect
Yeah.
everything, but is that the main issue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Again,
because I suppose if
temperature.
getting comfortable is the challenge for not falling asleep, well then bingo sorted. But
Yeah.
but if it's not that,
Yeah. And again, if we take let's say hormonal changes, men have a version of menopause as well. So we've got to point that out. So there is hormonal changes for men as well. We just don't have a specific label for it just yet,
well, I
or it's
think it's called
happening.
andropause, isn't it?
I heard different things, but it's not as
Yeah.
solid as menopause, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's less obviously talked about.
But I mean, I guess this is one of the key critical things just to say is all humans, regardless of gender, have hormones. Those hormones do stuff.
Yes, yes. And it changes over life stages and depending on your health, it's like the body changes everything. That's why, again, if we talk about menopause, everyone's experience of menopause is going to be different because
Mhm.
we're different.
Yep.
So if we take, let's say, menopause, and again, men overheat as well. That's why I'm sort of bringing both in. you might set the temperature at the beginning of the night, but it doesn't mean that's gonna effectively cater for the entire night because your body is creating a different temperature. And it's
Yeah,
not about at 2 o'clock in the morning turning down the temperature. You know what I mean? It's because it moves around too much.
yeah, 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 absolutely. And it's too dependent, I guess, on so many other factors as well, right? It's
Yeah.
just it's all encompassing. So I like how you always position what you do as being proactively practical as well. And I'm really conscious that we've got World Sleep Day coming up. And I am envisaging then our social media feeds are going to be full of cute little memes and sleep well things. And I can imagine that's probably going to make you roll your eyes so far back in your head they come back around again. So, are there any tips that you would like to share with people, or kind of things that you want to position so that when people are maybe starting to see this stuff flooding their feeds and then they feel bad about the fact, well, none of this works for me, that they can be forearmed with life, sleep skills for life that they are starting to implement now?
So one of the first thing I always say is let's not make something into a problem if it actually isn't one. What does that mean? So, just like I mentioned earlier, if your sleep is fairly stable and you have the ability to fall asleep, again, not in a second, but within 5, 10, 15 minutes, don't make yourself feel like that's not enough, right? So it's not how quickly, is do you feel that you're confident about knowing how you can work with yourself, right? That's one. If you see that 3 out of 7 days something is more consistently off or negative or troublesome or difficult, then don't wait to speak to someone. Most people Google, look at resources, and try too much. This is again what I see is people go try for 3 years, nothing works. But why it doesn't work is because it might not be even applicable to the problem, but they haven't spoken to anyone.
Mm.
So what you might then doing to yourself is you're proving that you're broken in some way because the thing you're trying is not working. It does not mean that you're broken in some way. It just simply could mean that it's not applicable to the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's the same as if people wanted to lose weight and they Googled it and the internet told them, well, go running because everybody loses weight when they go running. So that you go running and then you don't. And it's like, no, it just means that you're not a runner,
Yeah,
or
I'm
that
definitely.
doesn't.
I like team sports, but I'm not a runner.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's just silly, isn't it, to think that any one thing would be the thing that would work for everybody. So I think that's
yeah,
fantastic advice. So we're
and
saying step up and speak to someone early. Don't
yeah,
spend a long time going down a rabbit hole of concern for yourself when actually there's people like you that they can talk to who
yeah,
can ask the right questions
yeah,
to get the right information to think, well, as we if we're identifying, if know what the problem is, essentially, if there's no problem, then don't worry. If you think there's a problem, let's find out what the problem actually is.
is
Yeah.
yes. And if you see something online, ask yourself the question, does it feel like or think like? So me, I'll say think like, because I'm
And I would
thinker.
have feel like, yep.
You would say feel like. Does it feel like it's actually practically appropriate to what you're experiencing? Not just I'll give it whatever I'm like, I'll throw
Mm.
the kitchen sink at it. That's
Yeah.
that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
So if you're seeing something and let's say it's gonna say try and meditate for 10 minutes, that's probably gonna be one of the ones you might see. But you already know that your mind is racing 8 hours a day because you're maybe that type. That is unlikely to counter the experience you have.
Yeah.
It's too short.
Yeah.
And meditation, as it's taught now, it's actually distraction technique, not coming down from higher alertness technique. It's a different principle. If you're more of an emotional type person, if maybe you can actually tell me a tip you usually see because you're more that type.
Ooh. Uh,
Put you on the spot now.
yeah, I know. That's what are the things that we see when so if we're very feelings driven, it could be that we get into that washing machine of emotion. So it will be like, have a chamomile tea and
Yeah. Oh, I've got one.
lavender oil or something.
Or journal.
Yeah, oh yes,
Write down
journal.
your worries.
Yeah. Yes, that'll
Okay,
work. Make a big list of all the things that are going wrong right before bed. Yeah.
so see, and if you so journaling can be incredibly effective for a more sensitive type person, but not at 5 to 10 when you're turning your lights off at 10:15.
Yeah.
Because it's the only thing it's going to do is going to resurface all the things that drive the emotions. It's
Yeah.
not, and again, I want to be clear on this one because it's actually a very commonly recommended tool. Or worry journaling, it's not that it's not a good thing. It's often that the end of that, you're not closing it off. What it often does for a lot of people is you spend 20 minutes writing your worries, and the only thing that creates is you then spend the next hour thinking about them, even after you finish writing. So the technique is not closing it off and dealing with it, is just literally surfacing everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you surface, but you don't deal, you're not able to deal with it, that's not helpful either, right?
Can I throw in a little side
Yeah.
mission conversation then,
Yes.
because what that's also brought up for me then is the whole statement, and I know a lot of people that say this, which is never go to sleep on an argument, because that for me speaks to that. Well, then you have to wrap things up so you're satisfied. But I also don't think that that's the most helpful advice, because for me to get a resolution, being a feeler type,
Yeah.
I could quite happily, and my partner will attest to this if I'm allowed, like I could stay up until the sun comes right back up again, talking about my feelings and how I feel. And if I don't get a resolution, we're going to be going all day. So perhaps sometimes, there's another solution to that as well, surely.
So and that's a good one, actually. Both for thinker types, we don't want to kind of make this too much about one or the other. It's not
Yeah.
a competition.
Yeah.
We're all different, right? So we're taking that principle. So, for example, if we take the base principle that I teach or I talk about with my clients is whatever your nighttime, so your definition of nighttime, I'll give you my example. So mine is 11 to 7 is what my nighttime is. Most people label that as sleep time. I don't. So that's my nighttime. What that means is my job between 11 and 7 is to increase physical, emotional, mental relaxation in order to be able to expand my sleep into that time frame. Okay? So if you take this example, so don't go to bed with an argument in your head or mind or whatever. So if you're going to bed and you still not closed off your day, you're never beginning your nighttime.
Yeah.
You're carrying it in. You might fall asleep because you're tired, but you're packaged that in and you're bringing it into your bed environment,
Yeah.
right? And that's going to be unconsciously there because it's not separated out.
Yeah.
So, what do we mean by separating it out? So, for a more emotional type person, and this is going to be some variables as well. For some people, they feel like either they need to have the conversation with the person who's upset them, annoyed them, whatever that is, in order to have the resolution, right? Now, how I teach it is that you just have to separate it out and you can pick it up again at
Yeah.
the other end, but
Yeah.
you're not carrying it through.
Yep.
So some people, and again, that advice often leads to somebody's going to ring someone late at night because what they want is the resolution in order to sleep well. But you can just teach yourself, and again, this is where the skills are where you would go from here is If you can't just separate it out and it seeps in, what you don't have as a skill is that separation. Most
Yeah.
people call it letting go. I don't call it letting go because it's the purpose of it is not to never to think about it or feel it, is that your nighttime is protected from it.
Yeah. It's like pressing pause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And telling your body and your mind and your emotions that between, again, my example, 11 to 7, this is not the purpose of that time
Yeah.
frame. The
Yeah.
purpose of the nighttime is to elevate physical, emotional, and mental relaxation in order to make the most of our rest and relaxation. But we label it sleep. So we
Yeah.
highly pressurizing the sleep part without the foundation of the relaxation first,
Yeah. As
right?
you were saying that I had this image. So I'm a very visual thinker. And the
Yeah.
way it popped up in my head was, so for you, so you between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., if this is the rest and relaxation period, but we've got like a sleep balloon in the middle that we want to blow up to fill
Mm-hmm.
as much time of that as is
Mm-hmm.
required. But so long as we're doing activities or creating skills that kind of lead us to rest and relaxation,
Yeah.
then that's kind of what that period is for.
And it's they different to what you recognize as daytime. So
Yeah.
again, we take this argument example. If the daytime, if you train yourself to only feel calm if resolution is present, then that's your cycle.
Yeah.
That's your autopilot behavior. So if you have an argument and you're going to think, feel, get upset, frustrated, whatever, and you need to talk to the other person in order to get the resolution, then what's missing is you don't have the internal skill to put it away.
Yeah.
You always need to have the resolution of that conversation with the other person. So, for example, let's maybe go a bit more practical here because this is like really good. So, and I'm very happy to share this. So, couple of years ago, my mom passed away. I live in a different country. I'm originally from Hungary, so there was distance. And unfortunately, again, I made peace with it now. Took time, skills, but I did. My mom kind of distanced herself. So everybody deals with sort of illness differently, and she passed away. So I didn't understand, because we're different people, why she felt the need to distance herself from me before she knew she was going to pass away. I just didn't, I
Yeah.
didn't understand it, right? Now, I can't have a resolution anymore because she's not alive anymore.
Yeah.
So what I had to be able to do is learn, number one, not to let it go into my nighttime, because
Mm.
grief can, like
Yeah.
it seeps in. And I literally had to sit down, often 15, 20 minutes before I actually even thought about going to bed and say, I'm not going to carry this in. It's okay that I feel this way. It's okay that I don't understand. It's okay that I'm going through this. Most people have very judgmental, like, what's wrong with me? I'm annoyed. Why did this happen? Why did this person say that? Like, that's very different language. So when we take it back to thoughts and emotions, our language will either feed something or decrease something. So if I'm sitting on the sofa and I'm saying, it's okay that I feel annoyed, agitated, I, you're not feeding it. You're reassuring yourself.
Mm. Something that stood out as when you were saying that is when you were using the language, you were used it sounds very specific in that I am feeling agitated, not I am agitated. I
Yeah,
am feeling agitated. And that also creates a distance, doesn't it? You're not
yeah,
labeling yourself, you're labeling the experience and the
yeah,
feeling you're having, which is something you can put down.
yeah. And so that's a good, it depends conversations where they lead,
Yeah.
but I often talk about separating things out because then you can actually have a conversation with the experience.
Yeah.
So you can say you will start with I'll start with I'm agitated. Let's say I'm frustrated, but then I'm saying, okay, I mean I it's a normal human emotion.
Yeah.
It's okay that I feel, and then I add the I feel. It's
Yeah.
totally okay that I feel frustrated, but it doesn't actually have to continue into my future. So the presence
Hmm.
but we often don't compartmentalize it in a practical way.
Yeah.
We just push it away. And again, letting go is often a like letting it. When somebody passes away and you don't know how to get the resolution, you can't let it go
Yeah.
because you can't have that conversation. So
Yeah.
that's why again, I don't generally use letting go as a wording. I look at, do you have the skills to compartmentalize it out from your nighttime? It can come back in the morning,
Yeah.
but not into the nighttime.
Yeah.
So
It
I
sounds like,
felt
yeah, we're
grief.
critically thinking, aren't we, about what's going on for me, and then trying to make a choice about, well, what am I going to do with this? Because, you can acknowledge, well, if I carry on thinking about this, I know what my night's going to be like,
Oh,
my
absolutely.
nighttime is going to be like. So how can I say, okay, fine, well, this is still going to piss me off in the morning, I'll let my fresh
But,
tomorrow be pissed off.
and again, but my rest and relaxation and my nighttime peace and recharging is more important than anything else.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Anything else? That includes even my own frustrations and feelings that I experience during the daytime. It's important. It's more important than those as well.
Mm,
That's how you can secure the night proactively. It's the nighttime is not the outcome of the day or the next day. It's a standalone bubble. If we use the balloon example, that none of the past or future comes in.
yeah.
And that's really what deep sleep is. So if you ask someone you would define them as a good sleeper, they're not going to be able to tell you how they do it, but they also going to generally have this approach that I just don't take anything in. Like that's more important than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're not going to know the skills because they're so practiced at them. But that's really what we're talking about here is they have the skills, they just can't pinpoint them because they've always had them,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But that's really what we're talking about. If you ask, if any of you listeners ask someone who is, don't let it upset you if you're not sleeping well, right? But if you have that conversation, somebody says, I just go to bed and don't think about your problems. What they have developed is that they're completely able to separate out their daytime behaviors so they don't come into the nighttime.
Yeah. And I guess the reassuring thing here is it must be massively frustrating when someone says, just don't think about it. Because you're like, yeah, great, thanks, easy for you to say.
But
But what we're saying is the not thinking about it for now can be a learned behavior.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I teach it every single day. So, and again, for you listeners, if you have been struggling for a ride, for a while, this is why it's important to speak to someone who's maybe not just a scientifically trained person, but someone who works with behavior. Us humans are all about micro behavior, sequence of events, how we react, adjust. That's our entire 24 hours. So if you speak to someone who understands what that means in a practical way, you can always learn to create something different. So that's why if I work with a client who had 10 years of what I would call more severe insomnia, I explain this to them. This is not about undoing the past, healing the past, or whatever label you want to use. It's about beginning from here and train into the future. You're retraining your body and your mind so you're not carrying the autopilot behaviors, which is why you are experiencing what you're experiencing. Is you train a brand new set of skills that becomes autopilot, but they're good, so they become lifelong good supportive skills.
Excellent. So we're identifying problems. So we're identifying if we have a problem. And then
Mhm.
if we feel that we might have a problem, we're going to get some help early. That's what we're saying, to understand what that problem is, which leads us nicely into then, if the problem is that we're not able to switch off compartmentalize whatever the transition is that we need that gets us from our daytime state into our nighttime state, then that's something that we can get help with.
Yeah.
What other tips might you offer people ahead of our World Sleep Day?
Yes. Think of sleep as something that definitely not broken. So often I say this to people who have, let's say, 5 hours of sleep most of their nights. You still sleep. So it's not your sleep that's broken, it's that you're not able to influence it. So most of the people, this is what I say, whatever you're seeing with your sleep, if it is what you would define as a problem, we got to look at it as a puzzle. And again, very much the book that I've written, that's why the cover is also about puzzle pieces, because what we're not looking at is which piece fits into the place for you. And it's not complicated. Don't think of it as, oh my God, I now have to figure out all the little pieces. I normally give clients 4 to 5 things that brings things together again. It's not that it's 1,000 pieces, but you got to have the appropriate pieces and get curious. So if you stop thinking about it as unbroken, and this is how I got to where I am. I love working with clients, even though they come struggling, I'm excited. And when I tell them what's possible, they might not believe it, but they get the excitement because we become curious. Don't see things as I'm going to try for one night because that's never going to give you an answer. So if you do experiment, and I don't like to use the word try because try usually sets you up to fail most of the time. If you look at running a 2-week experiment and you feel or think that something that you saw relates to you, so this comes from the feel or think, it makes sense to me what I'm hearing, or I feel that it's appropriate, then don't just do it for one night. Do a 2-week experiment when you're changing nothing else. Because again, another thing people do is they change too many things and then they don't know what works. So change one thing, put it through a 2-week experiment, and then you can figure out whether or not it has had an influence or not.
Yeah.
Right? But I also say that I almost never start with physical. So whether or not you have a bath or not, it's probably not going to be hitting the spot.
Yeah.
It's going to be what you feel and think and what those things are there when and you know it. So as we're walking into a bathroom, brushing our teeth, let's say before we're going to bed, we know exactly what's in our head and our how we feel. It's right there.
Yeah.
But we don't listen to, oh, I see that I'm frustrated, or I see that my mind is still thinking about what happened 3 hours ago. That's the starting point, is you actually listen.
Yeah.
And so that's why, again, my work is simplified because I don't throw general things. I'm going to tell the client, tell me what your experience is. That's your experience. It's going to be different to other people's. You start there. Because most of the time, what you're going to see is because who you are drives this, you're going to see tendencies. Okay, so I keep getting nervous about this, or I keep getting frustrated about this, or I keep thinking about problems, or I keep thinking about future things instead of past things. Those are the tendencies that show up. So those are the sleep skills that you need to develop for what you are seeing. Curiosity is where people end up finding me. So they might have done 5 years of trying, but they continue to be curious about if other people can sleep well, then how can I do that instead of frustration?
Yeah.
And then you find something that will relate to you, that makes sense to you.
And as you're saying as well, it's about finding those practical, realistic life skills for you to develop in terms of your sleep, because it's not about expecting that they're going to have a conversation with you and immediately they're going to be, straight through the night, 8 hours every night. It's about moving from a place of, this is a puzzle that has to be solved because I'm not sleeping in the way that I desire to be or would like to be, or that is feels healthy to me, or that I think to be what I would like to be doing. And we're
Yeah,
moving from that place, and everything then feels like a step in the right direction
absolutely.
after that.
And again, that's why I very consciously called my book Sleep Skills for Life, because quick fixes will not last a lifetime because you're going to change. So I struggled when I was 25. Now I'm in my 40s. My body is different. My lifestyle is different. The pressures I have are different. But the skills work with who I am. So they still work no matter what the external is. That no skill is ever developed overnight.
For
Nothing.
sure. Ever, for
Like
anything.
ever, nothing. It's never overnight. It has to be relevant, and then you become better at it. And then it becomes autopilot and you do it automatically,
Yeah.
right? So again, in my book, I say this, and I think it's even in the first chapter, I say it because a lot of the times people, let's say, buy things and they expect the results. And I say it very early in my book, and I almost encourage people to return the book if they're not prepared to put the work in, is because none of this is gonna be overnight. Is obviously a book is more general anyway, but I laid out the book in addressing the physical, emotional, mental components of each part. So you can pick the pieces and put them in, but it's never going to be overnight. And also, if you're looking at an online tip, but you struggled for 5 years, you've also got to be realistic of how long it's going to take to undo what you've experienced, not heal it in that way, but to retrain it. Right? And again, one of the examples I put into my book is you can't put a plaster on a broken leg. It's not applicable.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got to take time to heal, and you might even have to realign the bones in order to heal so that it can function the same way as before it was broken,
Mm.
right? But we don't see sleep that way because the sleep industry has, for years and years and years, bombarded with tips, hacks. Like, that's not the principle here. It's long, we got to develop long-term things that work.
Yeah. And it's gone the same way as almost every industry, though, isn't it? As soon as it becomes an opportunity for money to be made, then of course we're going to be
Yeah.
flooded with, like you say, tips and hacks and whatever. And and I think even just the term hack makes me feel weird because I'm like, why are we hacking anything? Like that just feels,
Yeah.
so counterproductive. Nobody has ever been on the receiving end of being hacked and thought that was a good idea. So actually, why are we not putting our time and attention into our behaviors and our habits,
Yeah.
and doing things? Yes, they take more time or investment or understanding of ourselves, but is that not a good thing?
Well, I think we got to be because I've been around for so long, it's not a problem if somebody's curious about. So hacking is improvement.
Mm.
But hacking comes together with impatience, right? And again, we had this conversation like labels for me are just things that are there. I can work with that. So if a client comes in and says, "Yeah, I want hacks," I'm like, "Okay, I will never say hacks, but I'll teach you what it takes."
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can see it as a hack, I don't mind. But what, right? So
The
I don't
intent
mind
is
what the
different.
label is, but unfortunately what it comes with is impatience. And sometimes, and this is what I'm seeing more as well now, is lack of trust. So you might be buying something, hoping for the best, but if it comes with impatience and lack of trust, it's never going to land.
Mm. Or how many people have signed up to a gym membership in January,
Yeah,
with every intention of
yeah,
changing their
yeah.
habits and doing something, and by March we're just shelling out money for no reason.
And we're putting too much pressure on how quickly. So, funnily enough, I'm very active. I play a competitive sport in my free time. And I have changed gyms in January. And actually, it was really funny to receive the conversation about, oh, how much weight do you want to lose? I'm like, oh, that's not the reason I'm changing
Yeah.
in January. It's just because it caters for my training more, right? But it was actually quite funny because, and then the encouraging emails, right? So,
Yeah.
or encouragement about how are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going through I'm doing fine. Like there's no positives or negatives.
Yeah.
So yeah, but and it's a cultural thing. I think, I see it. The sleep industry, unfortunately, is driving it a lot of the times. Inventions are great. There's a lot of technology coming into the sleep field, but it's never gonna cater for behavioral change. You can
Hmm.
track your sleep all you want, but if you're not able to change the underlying behaviors and actions you take, it's not going to lead to the results. I often get clients who literally come with a year's worth of data, but they don't see what's preventing and helping. And I see it in not even a week because I'm trained differently. Like
Yeah.
I'm curious and saying, well, if that's the data, what's the behavior that's driving that rather than just the data?
Yeah.
So again, for you listeners, the two questions I want you to explore around World Sleep Day and all these kind of things you might see is you see it, does it relate? It's never going to be quick, especially if you have had longer term struggles. So you can run an experiment, but it has to come from, is it applicable first, right? And then really look at, I lost the train of thought now.
Oh,
Really
I do
look
that all the
at,
time.
huh?
Sorry, I do that all the time. Carry on.
Yeah, me too. Because we're like, that's why we were excited about this conversation,
Yeah.
right? Because we're having a real conversation. So as World Sleep Day coming, what you then want to follow up with is, oh yeah, got it back, is it helping or preventing? So if you put a tip in place and 3 days later you're seeing that it's actually frustrating you more, that's no longer helping.
Hmm.
And it's now becoming preventing. So preventing relaxation to be there because you're frustrated about it. So the two main questions that can really help you all to become what I would call practically self-aware and more curious is what helps and what prevents, but not in a judging way, not in a critical way, but really to see it practically. So if we go back to having a bath, but actually it's not created a result, then that's not helping it. So what's the
Hmm.
point of keeping it in place if you have not seen the consistent outcome?
Yeah.
Same with the journaling or the worry time. If you see that after doing that 7 days in a row, the only thing that happens is you worry more in bed, that's not working. If you do it once, you're never going to know,
Yeah.
right? So again, another for more thinker types, let's say the meditation. So if you do a meditation and it's not creating the results you want across the entire nighttime, then it's not applicable. So what helps and what prevents really helps us to build sort of a calmer, more practical self-awareness. It's not that I'm broken, it's just this thing is not matching my experience. So it's not helping it. That's it. That's the mismatch. It's not that that tool is not going to help someone else, it's that it's not matching your experience or it's not bringing the improvements that you would like to see. And sleep problems never go away overnight. So normally, and this is what I explain to my clients as well, when you begin changing, you're going to have to put enough pieces in place in order for you to see the significant results. But we all have a feeling that it's helping, even thinker types. It, it's helping. trust that. Because sometimes we don't trust that it's helping, right? We kind of like, oh, that hasn't fixed me. Well, okay, if you only did it 3 days, then it doesn't have the potential to sort you out. But
Yeah.
it doesn't
I
mean it's
guess it's
not helping.
manage your expectations as well. Keep checking back in between that
Yeah,
balance of helping and preventing, but
yeah.
manage your expectations.
Yeah, because if you're going in with impatience, nothing's gonna help
Yeah.
because you're not even helping it to land and solidify and become part of your experience, right? Um, and listen, all of us will have sleep in our lives. Wouldn't it be a great investment to secure it for many, many, many decades, years, no matter what your age is? Like, I'm still curious how my sleep is going to evolve from my 40s to my 50s, 60s, 70s. It's never going to stop. It's
No.
continuing to be with us and it's supporting us. We're just not supporting it, sleep.
Yeah.
We're almost working against rather than towards.
What an excellent point there as well. Like we have our whole lives to work on getting our sleep right, so we might as well try, or
Yeah.
we might as well experiment.
Yeah. And I think unfortunately, in my practice, that's what I'm seeing. I'm working with people in their 50s when they had 15 years of struggles. If we can take that out and maybe you only struggled for 2 years, imagine how much better your 40s and 50s would be because you go through it with greater quality, solid sleep, and you know how to work through the things that life throws at you, right? That's that's what I see now, having been a practitioner for 12 years. I get emails from people and they say, oh my God, maybe we worked in together in their 30s and they might have been in their 40s and they're saying, well, I'm going through these things, but oh my gosh, the skills still work because they
Yeah.
work with who they are,
Yeah. Brilliant. I
right?
like we're arming people with completely future proof skills. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Well, Beatrix Schmidt, thank you so much for joining me. Now, I'm conscious there must be people that will be listening to this thing. They would have been nodding along and thinking, yep, 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 yep. So we've already talked about your book, Sleep Skills for Life. So I'm going to guess that's available where all good books are available to be purchased.
Yeah. And you can also download the first chapter for free because, again, I'm very conscious about the whole sleep industry bombarding you. So, if you're just curious about, is that book going to be for me or not, come over to my website. We'll include the link. Download the first chapter. The first chapter really just sets the foundation. I tell people if this is what it's going to be about, you have a choice of either buying it or not, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's going to give a feel to anyone who's interested and see that introduction. But also, the other thing I also like to mention, because I struggled with insomnia, I still offer a complimentary sleep assessment appointment. Okay. Now, don't book that in if you have no intention of wanting to work on your sleep. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful in any way, but if you're not sure, you might just want to go read the book, or I've got a YouTube channel, you can look at different videos. But really, the sleep assessment appointment is when you've struggled for a while and you just can't figure it out. Because even if you decide not to work with me, it's that for that purpose, right? Is to help for me to help you kind of figure out what's not quite right there. Okay. But I do offer that free of charge because I think I had so many clients who just that appointment clarified to them which direction they need to go.
Yeah.
And naturally, if something sort of prompts you in terms of my work and what we talked about, then we can have that conversation. But it's sleep skills now coming out of 12 years of client work is I see what difference it makes. Tips can only take you so far. Skills will take you all the way through life. So
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. So what I'm hearing there then is if you've done that, identifying whether there is a problem, that's the first thing that we're telling people to do. So if people are thinking, yeah, I think I've got a problem, your free sleep assessment is the opportunity for them to come and have that conversation. If
Yeah.
they've had to think about, have I got a problem? I'm not convinced. That's what you've got, things like the book, the YouTube channel, and other resources I'm guessing that are also on your
Yeah.
website, where we can do a little bit of more self-assessment
Yeah.
to figure out
Absolutely.
where we are. And then if we still think, no, I need some proper one-to-one advice,
Mm.
then we can give you some contact.
Yeah.
Perfect stuff. And are you available on all the other social channels as well for people that might just want to follow you for general merriment?
So I'm not a very extroverted person, which means, yes, I've got social channels, but my YouTube channel is probably the better resource because I don't do tips because they don't work. So a lot of the videos I've done over the years, and there's like 180 videos now, are more really practical explanations and sort of more direct suggestions. So yeah, so YouTube channel is probably the best, and just sort of connect with me because all the stuff I put out, normally what I do is I look after my community first before social busyness, right? We all get very
Wow.
busy, but yeah, that way I can really get to know people and support people with where they're at, right?
Awesome. Awesome stuff.
So
So what
yeah,
I'm hearing is really no tire kickers, thank you.
it
I
just
get
doesn't
we know if
work.
we know if we struggle with sleep or not, and if we do, you're the place to be. That's what I'm hearing in that.
And that's why I've written the book because often the book is a good beginning to even understand what I do in more context because obviously our conversation here is limited,
Mhm.
but the book really has been written in a way that can take you through a journey if you're not what I would call severely struggling. If you've done the trying and testing and nothing seems to work and it's been going for a year or two or three or more, that's really the time to seek the proper assessment and speak to someone because you're past the general stuff.
Yeah,
That's the two group, right?
brilliant. Thank you so much. Beatrix Schmidt, is there anything that you came to say that you haven't had an opportunity to say?
Oh, we've said lots, but I think the main message is you're not broken just because you struggle. Sleep can be developed proactively when you work with how your sleep works. And I think that's the message I want people to really take away from this is just because it's not great now, it does not mean that you're limited in improvements. It's that we got to put the work in order to help the person work with who they are and their version of sleep.
Perfect. Beatrice Schmidt, thank you for joining me so much on the Speaking of Inclusion podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a really great conversation. Like not taking, that's so typical for more the emotional group
Yeah.
because that's the tip they always get given.
Yeah, that was so spot on. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because I am a fan of journaling because it does work for me. But if and I tend to do it earlier, but the journaling I do before bed is I write my gratitude journal because it's a different reframe, which
Totally
is it
different.
comes from a positivity, and I can think,
Yeah.
do you know what, today was better than I thought,
Yeah. Yeah.
done.
You know the one I do, well, the journaling I give to my clients it's a bit of a merge between different things. So I normally just go with, instead of the gratitude, I normally just go with what was good about today.
Mm,
Because again, if somebody struggles, gratitude, they're too far away from
yeah,
it, but good is there.
yeah, for sure.
And then you're like, because again, different practices can take you to different places, right? And then the one I do, so we start with that, and then the other thing I normally look at, and that's usually tailored a bit, is like presence. So what was good about today is a very good one because it grounds you in the kind of drawing that conclusion. Like just because I woke up exhausted, actually there was a
Yeah.
few pieces that was good instead of great. So that was still valuable. And then, the other thing I give for more sort of sensitive is people call it self-love. I just normally sort of go down the line of what did I do well, not even do, but what felt good.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I took 5 minutes out. That felt good.
Yeah.
Because the doing can be like judgmental. Well, I couldn't do as much as I wanted, right? But
Yeah.
it's more this like, actually, no, I'm proud of this that little piece. Like, how well have I conducted myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, as you can tell, I love my work because it takes me to different places, and it's not that complicated. The industry doesn't make it simple enough.
Yeah.